Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. You know, we've had a lot of amazing people on this show. We've had a variety of, characters and, shall we say, personalities, and maybe even a few hooligans. But I've got for you the hooligan in chief. She is here. Shannon Fitzgerald, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hooligan Central is present and accounted for.
Yes. So tell us a little bit, even before we talk about the Hooligans and all the amazing work that you do at your agency. What was your professional journey that led you to the work that you're doing today? And what were some interesting pit stops along the way?
Well, we don't have that kind of time, David. It has been an interesting journey, and not necessarily one that I saw coming. If I was to kind of look at one component that's run through all of my experiences, it's been as a storyteller. So writing, producing, directing. I was a showrunner in television for many years in England and later in Los Angeles, where I've been living for quite a while now. I was a senior vice president of development at MTV for 3 years. And then when Donald Trump got elected in 2016, early 2017, I had been marching and signing petitions and doing all of the things one does when they don't like the fact that that was our newfound reality. And it just wasn't scratching this itch that I had, that I wanted to do more. And so much of what I had heard historically about politics is the best politicians have the best stories. And if you look at most political ads or advocacy work or nonprofit work, it's either a boring PSA or that same political ad you've seen a million times. And I thought, why can't I take all of this experience that I've amassed over the last 20 years and bring it into this world? And so that's what I did. And it was an incredibly hard career transition to make, but it culminated in my now business partner approaching me in early 2020 to start the creative agency to kind of formally do this work under the Hooligans banner. And we kind of shot out of the cannon like gangbusters.
Humility is a wonderful characteristic. But you're pretty much like a huge rock star, and you've had all this amazing career, in the entertainment business and MTV and comic relief. And am I right that you also kind of discovered the Kardashians?
I did. I'm sorry.
Dude, what have you unleashed?
I know.
Tell us about, give me just a quick summary of that story, if you would.
Yeah, well, it's not what you think. So at the time, the TV climate was very much on the unscripted side, and I worked in both unscripted and scripted television. The climate on the unscripted side was very much about young Hollywood, and they liked that backdrop. And I was doing a season of The Simple Life, was directing it, and we were shooting at Paris Hilton's house, and Kim was there. And she had this closet restoration business she was doing. So she and I started chatting, and she was telling me about her crazy sisters and whom she loved very much. And they were launching these stores and figuring out how to be a legitimate businesswoman. She said, we don't know what we're doing, but we're really passionate about building a brand and building a business. And so I said, well, that sounds kind of interesting. I like the idea that there was this young Hollywood backdrop, but there was this sort of aspirational slant to it, which is I'd like to watch these girls figure out how to be real business women, because at that time that felt kind of aspirational, but still glossy and fun. And I met the family, and then I met the rest of the sisters and then the family. And I was like, oh my God, this is a show. But by the way, I did a little mini presentation. Every single network passed on it the first time I took it out. Nobody knows anything is the infamous quote from William Goldman, the screenwriter. And then 6 months later, did another version of it. And that was the one that sold to E! And the rest is history. But I really didn't know what it would become. I just had an instinct that there was a story that people would find fascinating.
Well, let's just put it this way. You weren't wrong.
Not wrong.
Not wrong. You were not incorrect.
No.
So give us a little bit of a sketch of what happens at the Hooligans. What is on the service menu? What are all the different ways that you serve your clients today?
We are extremely, I say niche because I'm Canadian via England. So video, that's all we do. We started out doing all of the things. And I just wasn't interesting to me. Video is what I do. That kind of storytelling is where I light up. It's what I'm good at. So we do paid and organic video content. We primarily in our first 3 years had been servicing our political advocacy nonprofit clients, but we've now been pivoting into the brand side, corporate world. We work with small to mid-sized agencies who need a really strong video creative partner, but we look for like anyone with an interesting story whose values align with ours. So it could even be a founder with a really unique story. It could be corporate social responsibility. It could be, a brand who has a really strong sustainability mission that feels unique and interesting in some way. Yeah. So it's really looking for those right fit, what I call high quality clients who are fun, collaborative, value what we do, and, pay well and pay on time and, things like that. We see the world in the same way, and they understand that great content really can change the world. It's how most people consume content.
So let's talk about video, and maybe particularly corporate video, but I guess it applies to entrepreneurial companies as well. If we were to rewind the clock, let's say 20 years, an entrepreneur or a CEO or a business unit head of a corporate division, they might come knocking on a door like yours and say, Shannon, we are working on the video, singular. We need one video to put on our website or on our YouTube channel to tell our story. Mm-hmm. And they look at video as a single event, in time, or as a single end result. Now we have the video. Yeah. I'm guessing that your best clients, it's no longer about the video.
Oh, you'd be surprised, David.
Well, but this is what I want to do a little myth busting here and maybe have some of your clients go, oh, we should call Shannon back because we need a whole bunch of videos. It's video as an event, video as a thing, or maybe a couple of things, or video as an ongoing communication channel to your community, to your stakeholders, to your prospects, to your clients, to your future clients, to your partners, especially now with YouTube, with all the live streaming, with TikTok, YouTube Shorts. So having a regular subscription-based stream of video content, not the video and not a video, but video is kind of a 24/7 always-on capability that your company, your division, your brand is using to communicate on an ongoing basis with the marketplace. Talk to us about why that's important and how that manifests itself with your most successful clients who really get it.
Yeah, well, and I think, interestingly enough, that this happens, the more positive piece of it, this sort of ongoing conversation that you're having with your clients or constituents or your audience on an ongoing basis. So you might have the mothership video, which tells the overarching story, but then you're pulling out micro slices of that story. And so you've got all of those components working together. So those micro slices are standalone assets, but they are a piece of this larger story. And I think when that's done well, that's the most effective way. And also not speaking at people, but it is a conversation. It's a two-way dialogue. And I think a lot of these platforms, people use them as a bullhorn. It was always meant to be a conversation. So I think paying attention to who your audience is, what they want, what stage of life they're at, really understanding who it is you're speaking to, and unpacking the story with the right amount of content at the right times on the right platforms. There's so much thinking that goes into it. And we do quite often get we need a video that tells our history and our accomplishments and where we're going. And I really try and talk them off that ledge. If you only have the budget to do one video, let's just drill it down. What's that one thing that you want someone to know after watching your video that they can then go to a cocktail party later that night and go, hey, I saw this video. Did you know? And they can say that one thing. Let's build the idea around that sort of core theme, that thing that you want people to know, and go from there, versus trying to pack every thought you've ever had about your company or organization and cramming it into one video, because nobody retains that. It's not interesting or compelling to watch, and it's a waste of money.
Much like 11th grade history class.
Oh, God.
Too
I
much.
quit school in 10th grade, I will say so. I didn't make it to 11th grade, but 10th
I
grade
love
was
that.
going to walk in the park, let me tell you.
Do you love selling? I know, me too. Do you hate selling? I know, me too. Listen, fantastic sales book you got to get your hands on. How do I know? It's mine. That's how. Do It Selling is now available for sale. Grab your copy, grab all the bonuses, all the companion tools, all the training, all the videos that go with it at doitselling.com. See you over there. I love this idea of the video as a conversation. Now, yeah, you can't have every video be like that, but sometimes we'll go on YouTube, for example, and there's videos that have an awful lot of views, but commensurately, not a lot of comments. Then you have other kinds of videos that have a ton of comments, maybe not that many views, right? 10,000, 15,000, 20. We're not talking about millions and millions of views, but they have like 500 comments because in the video, we are asking for feedback. We're asking for input. We're asking for, some sort of conversational call to action. Hey, pop in the comments, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? If you've had that experience. So how would you measure the success or the impact? Is it just about racking up views? Is it just about comments? Is it just about, what's the call to action? What's the link? Where's that video sending people? And I know there's going to be different answers for different types of clients, but how do we know if our video game is on point on any of those metrics?
Well, sometimes you don't. And there are sometimes KPIs that are obviously highly measurable. If you're, building a list, it's an acquisition play, then obviously you're seeing people signing up, donations are up, whatever the case may be. But I think the engagement piece is interesting. And I like the point that you made about, because it isn't just about views. Just because people look at something doesn't mean you persuaded them to do anything. They just looked at it, right? So sometimes that is a very hard thing to measure. But I think if you answer without doing this explicitly in a very on-the-nose way, people ultimately know how you can help them. Tell me something I haven't heard before. What's in it for me? Like, what value are you providing? How can you make my life better or more interesting or make me more popular, whatever the case may be, depending on the client. They're looking for how it's going to make their life better in some way. And I think when you answer that and they feel seen and heard and you wrap that in an interesting wrapper, it's not like, I see you, your pain and da da. But it's baked in there and it informs how that is being expressed creatively. People feel that. And then they want to engage in a different way. I don't know if I'm quite answering your question, but I think, it sometimes really is hard to measure, but you've got to be unabashedly human in your execution and really connect with people.
Yes, so good. I want to ask you something that you're going to probably laugh, but I'm guessing that some clients still come to you with this. Shannon, I love this whole video idea. So we're going to pay you some big, beautiful money, and you're going to help us go viral. We're going to go viral, right? We're going to have a viral video. What are some of the misconceptions or myths around viral? Because of obviously viral video, the whole term. It's like very few people say, hey, I want to have a viral article. I want to have a viral Pinterest post. They always say, I want to have a viral video. Mm-hmm. So how do you straighten that person's thinking out? And what are some of the myths and misconceptions when they come to you with that request?
Well, it's funny because sometimes I'll say, well, you know what? I was going to make a video that nobody watches, but I like your idea a lot better. And they always laugh. They go, oh, true. Look, if anyone knew what made things go viral, we'd all be a lot more successful and rich. And it was not dissimilar to the television business where a show would break through because it was unique and the first of its kind. And then every studio and network wanted to follow and do their quasi version of what's been done. But the point is somebody had that vision. They had an instinct that this thing that probably didn't really have any right to succeed based on what was already in the marketplace did in fact do that because it was something they wanted to make and they had a feeling and a passion around it. And I would say the same thing about, video content. It is impossible to know what's going to break through. I believe in data. We are certainly data driven, but we have a moral responsibility to know when the data ends and where our gut and our creativity begins. And it's how you strike a balance between those two things is kind of the magical formula. Do you know about the Maya principle? Have you ever heard of this?
I have not.
It's something that I have always done, starting back in my TV days, that I didn't know I was doing until I heard about it a few years ago. It stands for most advanced yet acceptable. And it was created by this famous industrial designer who was responsible for the design of Boeing and the Coke logo and a bunch of other things. But he came up with this formula in his quest to figure out what is it that helps ideas or people or products break through and rise above all of the noise out there. And he figured it was this formula where if you make something too out there, too unfamiliar, it freaks people out. The brain shuts down and they go, "Rrr." If you make it too familiar, it's boring. You need the aha moment. So it's the perfect combination of those two things. You want to make the familiar unfamiliar and the unfamiliar a little more familiar. So take Hamilton, the play, right? It's a story everybody knows in his history, but it's wrapped. So you have that unique formula. And that's something I think about a lot. How do I ground this in a way that doesn't freak people out, but make it surprising in some way? And I think that is a really interesting way to look at things. And I think that's when you have a better chance of connecting. And again, going back to this being like just unabashedly human, thinking about the human experience, who your audience is, and understanding them in a nuanced way and speaking to that and kind of combining all of those things. And I think the last thing I'd say is, as a brand or as a founder or a nonprofit, whatever the case may be, knowing who you are and what your values are really quiets down a lot of the noise. As in life, the more you know who you are, you're decisive. It's like, no, that either aligns or it doesn't. Not that you don't stay open to evolving and changing, but I think being clear about who you are as a brand or a person is key. And that takes work and the willingness to be honest and authentic. I hate the authenticity word because it gets thrown around, but there it is.
I love that. Most advanced yet acceptable.
Yep.
And I think this may have even been the same guy. I don't know. But when the iPhone first came out, this most advanced yet acceptable, it needed to have the word phone in it. They couldn't call it, the jizzle whizzle, the magic, Shazam thing. It's a phone. So that's the familiarity piece, but it's a phone without a keyboard. What? It's a phone without a keyboard? That's crazy. What are you talking about? And of course, it has apps. What are apps? It's more than just a phone. It's like a phone plus, plus, plus. It's a phone plus a computer that goes in your pocket. That's a great example, is it not, of that Maya principle?
Yep. And it taps into their long-standing ethos, as Simon Sinek points, the why, we're not the what we do, right? And the why is you think differently. And so I think, again, it's bringing something that people haven't seen or heard before and contextualizing it in a way that they sort of immediately on some level get how this is going to make my life more interesting or better or fun or convenient. This will save me time, whatever it is, they start to kind of think about it. So yeah, it's a great example.
Tremendous. Well, let's talk about sales and selling, because that's obviously one of the premises of what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So are you still the kind of salesperson in chief as the CEO, or do you have a sales team? Or tell us how the sales function works in your agency.
We're a teeny tiny agency. So my partner on the political advocacy and nonprofit side has been a longtime political strategist. So he has all of those contacts. So he kind of works that side of things. And I've been focusing on the biz dev side, on the more on the brand and the corporate side, entertainment, media, that kind of stuff, as we're kind of pivoting and opening up the aperture of the agency. And I really do run the day-to-day creative. So I'm trying to get out of that more, but we're at that weird time where we're functioning like a larger agency than we began, but we're still like breaking through that ceiling of building the team and scaling in a responsible way, in the way that we need to without breaking the bank.
So on the sales side, is it fair to say it's the Shannon and Tim show?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And then as you two were forming this I'm guessing, but again, that's why it's an interview instead of just David sitting here guessing by himself. Are we building this to be saleable at some future time, 5-10 years down the road, or not really? That's not part of the plan.
It's an option. We've actually, believe it or not, and we've only been in existence for will be 4 years in May. We've already had an offer and another potential one. We turned that down. That was 2 years in, and we're just like, we're not, it's not right. We're not ready for that yet. I'm really interested to see where we can go now that we're pivoting. But I think it's always wise, especially if you're thinking that as an option down the line, you want to be thinking about it 3 to 5 years ahead, right? So what are you doing to become a desirable acquisition? From your finances to the team, to the compensation, your leadership team, all of those things. Have your ducks in a row so that it is an option and we're not scrambling. Should we go, you know what, now it's the right time.
Right.
And then suddenly, but we've been thinking about that all the way along.
And you mentioned scaling is part of the scaling desire to sort of remove yourself a little bit more from the day-to-day and have more systems and process and more of a roadmap of how the agency works that does not depend on Shannon's personal time, attention, presence, etc.
Yes. And in fact, so 2 things on that, because it's such an important point. I am very systems and process oriented. And as a true creative, I know that on the other side of preparation and organization is freedom. And so I understand the value of that. It's also, you got to have all that in place if you are going to be acquired one day, right? You've got to have all that document. If I get hit by a bus, the agency someone can pick up the manual and know how to run it. The piece that I'm still involved in is very much my creative brain. So I'm now starting to build out the team. I want to be obsolete. I want to be, in the next couple of years. Like, you don't need me, but I'll come in for the projects I'm really passionate about. I'll be that figurehead. I'm there to weigh in on important decisions, but my team is running the day-to-day.
Yeah, no, I love that. Tell us, because you mentioned earlier about clients willing to pay. My big belief is we want clients not only willing to pay, not only able to pay, but eager to pay you lots and lots of money, because it is incredible value. It is 5x, 10x ROI, and so forth. In your sales process, when you're connecting with someone, whether it's a referral, an introduction, someone has seen the website, whatever it is, what are some qualifying and disqualifying strategies that you like to use early on in the exploratory conversations?
Well, certainly, if we're talking politically, that's a pretty obvious one. If you are against access to abortion, well, that's a non-starter. Things like that are the obvious ones. But I think, this is going to sound so ephemeral and so annoying, but there's a vibe, certainly, the conversation you have. Is there a value on good creative? If we lay out the process, will you respect that and follow that if you want us together? Because we work on very fast deadlines. Like, people don't know this when they look at our website. Everything on our website, I think, except for one thing, we made soup to nuts from ideation through delivery in a week, and sometimes even less. And that's the political world, as annoying as it can be, because like, we need this tomorrow, even though they knew 3 months ago they needed it in some cases. It's trained us to be very decisive, scrappy, resourceful, et cetera, et cetera. But I think one of the challenges we've had in those worlds is people not necessarily respecting the creative process, which is why we're always in a crunch mode. So really trying to get a handle on that. Why did you come to us? What was it about us that caught your eye? And really kind of drill down on how they think about creativity. Are you trying to lowball us? That tells us something. And by the way, we don't need the budgets and timelines that mid to large agencies get. I actually think that's too much. But we're not going to be paid bottom of the barrel. We're really good at what we do. So it's having those conversations and being really honest about that and not being afraid to dig in.
I love that. I'm guessing, like many seasoned entrepreneurs, you learned this pricing lesson maybe the hard way. Are there stories where clients, early on, right, salad days, we did not have a big pipeline, we maybe didn't have as much kind of inbound activity as we have now? Were you feeling early on that some of the deals were underpriced, or it was just, hey, we got to close this deal just to put food on the table and we're never going to look back on the cheap pricing that we were willing to accommodate? Or were you super premium from day one and forced that standard right out of the gate?
Yep. Premium. We were always in our existing worlds, political advocacy, nonprofit, on the higher end, always. But it's like, if you want your comms person to bash out a script, buy some stock video and have your video intern knock out that spot, great. If you want conceptual ideation, really thoughtful and unique approaches and new ways to deliver your messages to even hard to reach audiences, you come to us. And some people are willing to pay for that and some aren't. And sometimes what happens is they'll come to us and they have an idea in their head of what something should cost. And then as we talk it through, I'm like, no, actually it costs this much. But once they understand the approach and the work that we do, more often than not, they'll come around and say, okay, we can let us find that money. We'll up our budget. So, you know what? Our time and our effort and our energy and our skills and our experience have value. And those are the folks that I want to work with.
Hey, if you're loving this episode as much as I am, pop over to doitmarketing.com/manifesto and get your free 37-page download guide to how to sell smarter, sell more easily, sell more often. That's what we're here to help you with at The Selling Show. Off you go. I also want to talk a little bit about timing, because you said that some of your turnaround can be very, very fast, maybe even most or all of your turnarounds very, very fast. The sales process, when someone qualified is coming to you, knocking on the door, are we generally talking about one conversation and they're in, or can the sales process kind of get delayed and protracted and, 2-3 months of a sales cycle versus a single phone call? Yes, you're a great fit. Let's get started.
A lot of it is a single phone call, usually because people are aware of our work and they're moving on pretty fast timelines. So I think if it's everything's lining up in terms of that conversation, they know we can execute. But I think the only times it really gets delayed, and this is a little bit different, obviously, as we pivot into kind of corporate brand side, those are longer lead times. We're starting to find that. But even then, I think in those are definitely being more expedited or are more expedited than they used to be. And I don't think we always try and get our clients, like we have had 2 in the last week that don't have projects due until April. We're like, well, we can start now. Let's truncate that experience. Once we're in a rhythm, let's really kind of move it through. There's no point in delaying. Getting in a rhythm and a role, and that communication is really important. It's just nicer to have longer than a week to do it. But we don't need months either. So I think something can get lost and you can start overthinking. That's the other thing I really try, and especially when we're building a client's tolerance for creative risk taking, the more time they have to think about it, and then they start asking everybody, and then everyone's got an opinion, and then it's just it's a recipe for disaster.
Yes, too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, too much time to think.
So now I have to ask you a very bizarre insider question. Okay. Who is the 8-bit gamer on the team? Who loves the 8-bit retro video games?
Well, it was for one particular client, but we work with a really talented Detroit-based motion graphics designer who can basically create anything. Yeah. And that was for a Gen Z young millennial audience and trying to get them interested and passionate about voting for their Secretary of State. So that was a video game saying hey, as our little man moves through the sort of Pac-Man-like maze, he's hitting student debt and, gun violence and all these things, all these obstacles in our way of living a happy, meaningful life. But here's one way that you can help, protect democracy, which means your vote is protected.
Yes.
Secretary of State.
There you go. I like it. I ask that because that just immediately jumped out at me from your whole portfolio, because I'm kind of an old school gamer, Atari, Nintendo, Pac-Man, Space Invaders, the whole deal. That's really fun. So as we're landing the plane here, I've got 2 final questions for you. The final question is, how can people get connected and stay connected to more Shannon Fitzgerald brilliance? But before we even get there, if folks were to take one major idea about the power of video for advocacy, the power of video for brand advocacy, what would you want that big takeaway concept to be around the power of video?
Well, we know that it is the most common, by far, way that people consume news, information, everything. It is just the way that we communicate and find out about the world. And so I think dispelling the myth that you can't be substantive and entertaining. You absolutely can do both. You start with a theme, you start with that important strategic objective or thing you want people to know about your brand, or you're a politician or your mission, whatever the case may be. And then think about who your audience is and figure out the most interesting, attention-grabbing, and emotionally resonant package that you can wrap that in and serve that.
Yeah.
It is effective. And if you really work in collaboration with folks like ourselves who are thinking out of the box, who aren't satisfied with the status quo, you really can make an impact. And you don't have to spend a ton of money to do it. And may I give you one example?
Please do.
We have a client called Gas Leaks Action, and their whole mission is to get Gen Z and millennial folks to understand the dangers of natural gas, which is really methane gas. It's a fossil fuel, right? And it's in your stoves. So we did a fake horror movie trailer that was about the horrors of methane gas and, it's coming from inside the house, that kind of thing. We made it in a week for, a relatively small budget, and it ended up getting called one of the best ads of the season by The Drum. It was featured in The Guardian, and we're talking alongside brands like Bacardi and IKEA and Meta, brands with major time and money on their hands. And I'm like, no, you don't need all that. You need good strategic and creative thinking and empowering your creative folks that you hire to execute. In conjunction and in collaboration, but trust us and trust your audience. They get it. They are way smarter than you give them credit for.
So good and so important. Well, I know that folks will want to get connected and stay connected to more Shannon Fitzgerald brilliance. Where can they go? What links should we have in the show notes for folks?
Easiest way, and I guess I probably should do something a little more creative and interesting, but go to the website. It's thehooligansagency.com. You can reach out to me, Shannon at thehooligansagency.com. I'm always here to, answer emails. And even if it's no to a question you were hoping a yes for, but you will get a response. And if you're looking to figure out how to up your video game and just want some advice and just want a sounding board, I am happy to do that too, time permitting. But let me be of service. Let me pass on what I know, especially if you're, like-minded in terms of values and trying to do good work in the world and make the world a better place. I'm here.
Tremendous. Also LinkedIn, or you're not much on LinkedIn?
Yeah, we're on LinkedIn. That's LinkedIn, the Hooligans Agency.
Okay. So we'll put all of those in the show notes directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Shannon Fitzgerald, you are such a rock star. It's been a pleasure. We need to have you back on the show because this was so much fun. We just scratched the surface because we didn't even get to talk about real facts. Like, do we even have facts in this country anymore? I don't know if we do, but that would be a great start. Well, we'll have that as the first interview question on your return appearance. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you, David.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.